always. There we go. Yes, so thank you for taking the time to attend. And just a few housekeeping notes to mention before we get started. Firstly, the recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you tomorrow, so no need to worry about trying to note down any information on screen. It'll all be sent your way. And secondly, if you have any questions as we go through the webinar, please feel free to write them in the chat. My colleague Mary will be supporting me today, so she'll be keeping track of your questions. And
hello, everybody. You're welcome.
Thanks for the help, Mary. And any questions she doesn't get a chance to answer, I can answer at the end of the webinar, or we'll email you afterwards. So don't worry, all questions will be answered. All right, so before we jump in, I would like to officially introduce myself. My name is Kiri Spanovic, and I'm the Communications Officer for 50 Shades Greener, and I'm pretty passionate about rubbish. Or at least I'm passionate about the proper management of rubbish. I used to work as a marine biologist and scuba diving instructor on some truly beautiful island nations, but one thing they all had in common was waste and litter. In fact, I have yet to see any country without any litter, and as a biologist, environmentalist, and just lover of the natural world, it's kind of a bummer. But what can I do about it? Well, I can do my best to teach others about the importance of waste management. So here we are today. To give you an idea of our webinar schedule, today we're going to go through the negative impacts of rubbish, waste segregation and why it's important. We'll go through waste auditing 101, and finally the concept of circular economy and how you can integrate circularity into your business. So, I think we all have at least a vague idea that rubbish is bad for the environment, but I would like to go into a little more detail and hit you with some big numbers and statistics, so get ready. Right. Over 2 billion metric tons of waste are generated each year, and if current waste management practices continue, this will become 3.8 billion metric tons by 2050. Of that 2 billion tons, 400 million tons is just plastic, and about half of that, so 280 million tons, is disposed of shortly after use. So think single-use items like candy wrappers, mini shampoo bottles, things like that. And nearly 50% of all plastic waste ends up in landfills, while 22% is completely mismanaged and leads to widespread environmental pollution. Speaking of environmental pollution, an estimated 19 to 23 million tons of plastic are dumped into the oceans annually, directly impacting over 1,500 marine species, and not to mention the thousands of species that are being impacted indirectly. On land, microplastics and toxic chemicals from improperly managed waste leak into soil and water systems, posing severe threats to wildlife, especially in areas near open landfill sites. So we get that waste is bad in the water and on land, but it's in our air too, unfortunately. Waste in open landfills contributes significantly to climate change. These sites release 20% of all human-related methane emissions, which is a greenhouse gas that has a warming potential over 80 times that of carbon dioxide. And finally, making plastic also has a huge impact, generating over 1.8 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases back in 2019 alone. So you can only imagine it's gotten worse from there. Now, maybe you don't care enough about the environment to start changing waste patterns, and that's fine. I'm not here to judge. But it is worth noting that waste has a huge impact on people as well. So on human health, improper waste management leads to contamination of water sources with hazardous chemicals and pathogens, increasing the spread of diseases. For example, untreated waste has contributed to outbreaks of cholera, diarrhea, and other waterborne illnesses in regions with inadequate waste infrastructure. I don't know if anyone here followed the Paris Olympics and happened to hear about all the triathletes that got very sick from swimming in the Seine, but that is a great example of improper waste management ending up into a water system. There's also air quality issues. So open burning of waste is still very prevalent in many parts of the world, and it releases toxic pollutants into the air. This contributes to respiratory illnesses, particularly in vulnerable populations like children and the elderly. There are also economic costs. So the World Bank estimates that poor waste management annually costs over 200 billion in lost revenue from recyclable materials and cleanup costs. Additionally, the economic burden of healthcare due to pollution-related diseases makes these costs worse. There are also landfill management costs. So the maintenance of sanitary landfills, which actually only account for 8% of global landfills, is expensive, which is why it only accounts for 8% of global landfills. So this leads to reliance on cheaper but environmentally damaging open dumps, which increase long-term economic costs due to environmental degradation and health impacts. Finally, we have social inequality. So there's a disproportionate impact on low-income communities because low-income and marginalized communities are more likely to live near landfills, incinerators, or areas with overall poor waste management. These communities suffer from higher exposure to pollutants, leading to a range of health issues, further entrenching social inequalities. Waste facilities are also often sited in areas with less political power, leading to a disproportionate environmental burden on these communities. And indeed, there are many Western countries, including the US, UK, France, and Germany, who actually export their waste to poorer countries. So this creates a cycle of poverty and poor health that's difficult to break. Okay, so I think I've made my point that the world has a big rubbish problem. So what is it we can do to help? The first step, and it's a really straightforward one, is actually just segregating your waste. So what is waste segregation? It's basically what it sounds like. It involves separating waste into different categories, such as recyclables, hazardous, organic, food waste, or general waste, or non-recyclables. And this is one of the ways you can actually start reducing your environmental impact and promoting sustainable waste management, and it's a really simple step to take. So, you might be wondering if segregating your waste actually has a very big impact at all, considering the scope of the global waste problem. Well, the answer is definitely a very emphatic yes. Effective segregation and recycling can reduce the amount of waste entering landfills by up to 50%. So that's half, which significantly decreases soil and water contamination risks. Segregation also enables recycling, which conserves natural resources. So recycling 1 ton of paper, for example, will save about 17 trees and 7,000 gallons of water. So effective segregation also ensures that materials like paper, plastics, and metals can be recycled and reused rather than wasted. In some regions, recyclables like aluminium and paper also have significant market value. So, for example, recycling aluminium saves 95% of the energy required to produce new aluminium. So that's almost 100% of the energy just by recycling. Segregating hazardous waste from non-hazardous waste also reduces the risk of chemical exposure, fires, and contamination. For example, separating e-waste, which includes items like phones, laptops, tablets, etc., from general waste, prevents the release of toxic substances like lead and mercury, which can harm human health. Finally, waste segregating helps prevent injury. Proper segregation minimizes the risk of injuries to waste handlers and workers in waste management facilities by having appropriate labels and being handled appropriately. So lots of good things come out of segregating your waste. Great. Now that we've covered the basics of waste segregation, an important next step is waste auditing. So you've segregated your waste, great. It is also worth mentioning that different countries will have different regulations on what waste can be segregated where. So for example, I live in the Netherlands and we don't have food waste or compost bins, so that goes into the general waste bin. So before I jump into waste auditing, it's just worth noting to check your local regulations and what local bins you have available. Okay, now on to waste auditing. A waste audit is basically an examination of the types and quantities of waste your business or your home generates. So why is this so important for us to know? Well, by understanding the types and quantities of waste being generated, you can gain insights into areas where you can reduce, reuse, and recycle. So at 50 Shades Greener, our motto is that what gets measured gets managed. If you don't know where the problem is, you don't know how to fix it. So the goal of a waste audit is to find the problem areas. Only then can you improve waste management practices, increase recycling rates, and lower waste-related costs. So I don't know about you, but all I'm hearing is less waste and more money, which is a win-win. Okay. So before we go into like the actual steps in conducting a waste audit, I just want to address some of the benefits, because not everyone is like me and will view sorting rubbish as a win. So to many, shockingly, waste auditing might kind of sound like a drag. But there are some undeniable benefits that will hopefully give you a little bit of a boost when it comes time to digging through rubbish. The first is that it gives you the ability to identify waste reduction opportunities. So by identifying your most significant waste streams, you can target and reduce unnecessary waste. Companies that conduct waste audits have reported reductions in waste of up to 40%. So that leads directly into my next point, which is cost saving. By optimizing your waste management practices, businesses can reduce disposal costs, divert waste from landfills, recycle more, and even generate new revenue from selling recyclables. Then you've got regulatory compliance. So waste audits ensure that businesses are complying with local and national regulations regarding waste management, particularly for hazardous waste. Non-compliance with waste disposal regulations can lead to fines, but regular audits can help ensure proper handling and documentation. It also makes you look good. So it improves your sustainability and your corporate image. A waste audit helps businesses track their environmental impact, which can be used to set sustainability goals and improve reputations among customers and stakeholders. Companies that showcase their waste reduction and sustainability efforts often see improved brand loyalty and customer trust, which kind of just goes to show that in this day and age, people care about rubbish. And finally, waste audits can increase employee engagement by providing a platform to involve employees in sustainability initiatives. This boosts awareness and engagement across the organization, and businesses that engage staff in waste reduction efforts often report increased buy-in for other sustainability initiatives. So just talking to your employees about segregating waste can get them more interested in sustainability in the long run. Now for the step-by-step. So there are 4 main steps to waste auditing, and the first is just planning. So there's 2 parts to this. One is defining the scope of the waste. So you want to determine what areas of your business will be included in the audit. Will it cover the entire organization, specific departments, or particular types of waste? For a small business, it might be enough to audit the kitchen and office waste, while a larger faculty might require, or a larger facility might require a more comprehensive approach. So you might have to look at more areas. And the second part of planning is assembling a team. So you want a team that includes representatives from various departments, such as operations, finance, and sustainability. Diverse perspectives are going to lead to a more thorough understanding of waste generation. The next step is data collection. So you want to collect data on all waste streams generated over a defined period. Could be a week, 2 weeks, a month, up to you. And from there, you want to segregate waste into categories. So like we mentioned, waste segregation, organic, recyclables, hazardous, etc. And make sure to use bins that are clearly labeled for each category. Feels obvious, but little obvious things can help. So once you've segregated your waste, you want to make sure that you're weighing the categories at the end of the audit period. So this gives you an actual figure that can quantify the total amount of waste being generated. And you want to make sure to keep that in a log somewhere. So step 3 is going to be data analysis. Now you've collected the data, it's time to analyze it. So you want to try and identify any trends, major waste streams, and areas for improvement. And then you can find the best way to represent the data. So maybe that's just raw numbers, graphs, charts, you have at it. Just some questions that you can also consider while analyzing your data are looking at, what waste types are generated in the highest volumes? Are there specific departments that produce more waste? Things like that. Finally, step 4 is going to be reporting and improving. So prepare a comprehensive report that summarizes your findings, including the total waste generated and the breakdown by category. And this can then be presented to stakeholders. Okay. So now that I've gone over the steps to conduct a waste audit, here's just a few tips that I think I find helpful to make the process a little bit less rubbish. So the first, as I mentioned previously, is use clear categories. This is going to help identify major waste streams and prioritizing actions for reduction. Next up, set realistic goals. Don't make it harder on yourself than it already is. Establish achievable and measurable goals based on your audit findings. These will help track progress and motivate continuous improvement. So you want to increase recycling 5% in the next 6 months. Great, that is a realistic and measurable goal. With that, you want to be tracking your progress. So you want to conduct follow-up audits periodically to assess progress towards your goals and identify areas for improvement. Maybe a 5% increase in recycling in 6 months is a way underestimation of what your facility is actually capable of. But you won't know that unless you're tracking your progress. And finally, and I cannot stress this enough, it's crucial to engage employees. Encouraging employee participation in the waste audit process or in any sustainability initiatives is going to foster a culture of sustainability. You can provide training sessions on waste segregation, recycling practices, and the importance of waste to enhance awareness. You can also consider implementing incentive programs. So like rewards for departments that achieve the highest recycling rates, for example. And this is going to give you a better buy-in from employees to care about rubbish. Okay, while waste segregation and waste audits are certainly both important steps towards better waste management, the end goal should be a circular economy. And if this is the first time you're hearing the term, well, circular economy basically moves away from the traditional linear approach that focuses on purchase, using, and disposing of items, and instead focuses on keeping products and materials in use for as long as possible through reuse, repair, and only when all else fails, recycling. And there are 5 key principles to the circular economy that I will briefly go through now. So the first one is designing out waste and pollution. This focuses on reimagining products and processes to eliminate waste from the outset. So the goal here is to reduce environmental impact through smarter design. Next, you want to keep products and materials in use. So extending the life cycle of products via reuse, repair, remanufacturing, and finally recycling. Basically, you are just trying to maximize the utility of a resource by keeping it in production or keeping products in circulation as long as possible. It's kind of like if you have a favorite sweater, you keep wearing that sweater until it either falls apart or you get tired of it. And when you get tired of it, you can always cut the sleeves off or crop it and make it something that you want to continue to use. Then we've got regenerating natural systems. So the goal here is to restore and regenerate ecosystems by returning valuable nutrients and promoting sustainability. So this goes beyond just minimizing harm to active restoration of natural systems. Then we've got circular design and production. So designing products for durability, easy disassembly, and recycling. These few steps can ensure that products are built to last and can be easily repurposed. I don't know if any of you know of Patagonia, the clothing brand, but they're great at this. They design products that are meant to be reused, easily repaired, and when you cannot repair them anymore, they can be dismantled and easily recycled. And then finally, we've got sharing economy and collaborative consumption. So this promotes shared use of resources and products to reduce the overall demand. So it's basically a mental shift or a societal shift from ownership to access, which reduces production and waste. We were all taught as kids, I imagine, to share. It's a big thing in the circular economy. So if we just share a little bit more, then we don't need to produce quite as much. Okay. Now that we've defined the circular economy, here's a bit on theoretically integrating the circular economy. And in the next slide, I'll go into a little bit more practical ways of integrating the circular economy. So if you're like a little confused and wondering how you can implement this in your business, just hold on, I'm coming to it. But that being said, the circular economy focuses primarily on designing out waste, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. So first, you need to know where you can reduce waste, and that's where your waste audit steps in. Assessing your products and processes can identify areas where waste can be reduced or use materials that can be easily reused. So you can start small by targeting the most wasteful products or processes in your business and look at ways to replace that. For example, using compostable or biodegradable packaging where you would have used just recyclable packaging. All right. Next, you want to look for opportunities to reuse materials within your business or in partnerships with others. So you can repurpose packaging or using offcuts in production. You can also set up a take-back program for your products. So this offers incentives for customers to return items at the end of their life cycle. So like, I know some cafes will have, a deposit scheme where you pay a deposit for your cup, and when you return it, you get the deposit back. And finally, you want to close the loop. So implement strategies to return materials to your suppliers or your customers, creating a closed loop system where resources are continuously cycled through the economy. This can mean exploring partnerships with other companies or industries that can use your waste as input for their processes, creating a circular supply chain. A bunch of fancy words to basically say one man's trash is another man's treasure. There are facilities that will pay for scrap metal. So maybe if you're in a business where you produce a lot of scrap metal, you partner up with someone who will then recycle it into something new. But that in mind, there are some more practical ways to integrate circularity. And the first one we're going to look at is just in your day-to-day operations. So you want to start by analyzing daily operations and identify small changes that can have a big impact. So some examples here can include replacing single-use containers in the workplace with, or at home, with reusable alternatives. You can also switch from paper-based record keeping to digital record keeping to reduce paper waste. You can also implement practices like double-sided printing, using scrap paper for notes, and encouraging the use of reusable mugs and water bottles. And in all of these initiatives, as I mentioned before, engaging employees is going to be crucial for its success. Educating employees about the benefits of circular economy practices, involve them in identifying further opportunities for circularity. One way to go about this is by organizing workshops or training sessions on circular economy principles. This encourages employees to suggest ways to reduce waste on their daily tasks. Making it a team effort not only makes it more fun, because it's a lot more sad to be sitting there thinking how you can be less wasteful by yourself versus with a buddy, but it also means collecting a variety of good ideas and perspectives, which also is always going to be a win. So then we've got long-term strategies. And for long-term strategies, partnerships and collaborations are great. So developing partnerships with suppliers, customers, even competitors can help create a more sustainable supply chain. With competitors, you know that you're going to be using the same materials, so maybe there's a way for you to both reduce your costs. Collaborative efforts can lead to shared resources, reduce costs, and new business opportunities. So you can consider sharing resources like transportation or storage with other companies, which, as I mentioned, can reduce costs and environmental impact. You can also choose to work with suppliers who provide sustainable materials and are open to taking back products for recycling or repurposing at the end of their life cycle. And another long-term strategy, which is a little bit more hands-off, but is still effective, is investing in technologies that support the circular economy, such as recycling systems, renewable energy, or manufacturing processes that minimize waste. Okay, so some practical ways, long-term and daily operations. And I would be remiss if I didn't also address some of the challenges in integrating the circular economy, but they're fairly solvable, so don't fret. One of the biggest is initial costs. So yes, it might require some upfront investments, but the long-term savings and benefits often justify the expense. So if you're looking at investing in renewable energy, absolutely that is a significant cost, but you will start to see a return on investment very quickly. And that's the case with any circular economy principles. Some other solutions can also include looking for grants or subsidies or partnerships that can help offset some of these initial costs. So depending on what region you're in, what country, there might be ways to help foster the change from linear to circular. And another challenge that I'll address today is changing the mindsets of employees, customers, and even management to embrace the circular economy. Not everyone likes to share, and that's fine. But my suggestion here is to start with small, visible changes that demonstrate the benefits of circular practices. So success stories and clear examples of cost savings can help convince stakeholders of the value of these initiatives. And this can also mean showcasing successful case studies where the circular economy has led to significant improvements in sustainability and profitability. But there's loads. You can just Google, case studies on circular economy in your city, in your country, or just in general, and you're going to find lots of case studies of people who have implemented this and have seen big returns. So show, don't tell when it comes to changing minds. Okay. So just like waste segregation and auditing are steps towards a circular economy, if you want to have a truly sustainable business, the circular economy itself is just one part of a broader framework of your environmental, social, and governance strategy, or your ESG strategy. So for those who are ready to deepen their impact and lead with purpose, our ESG leadership program offers practical tools and insights on integrating environmental, social, and governance principles. And indeed, the circular economy is covered under that umbrella. And as someone who recently actually completed the ESG leadership program and received a distinction on my ESG report, I might add, I can personally vouch for how transformative this course can be. It was great. It was so interesting to learn about, and it equipped me with the knowledge and actionable strategies to understand more about ESG down the line. You know, if I want to start my own company or I'm working for another company that doesn't have an ESG report, I know exactly what to look for and how to write one. So that's great. But on top of it, ESG reporting is going to keep you in line with CSRD regulations, which as of January 2025 are slowly creeping up on us. And if you don't know what the CSRD regulations are, basically it is demanding ESG reports within the EU. It's a demand for ESG reports on all medium to large sized organizations. So if you're interested in continuing your sustainable journey, our next ESG cohort starts on November 20th. So you can get in contact with us at the email info@50shadesgreener.ie, or I will just in a moment send the link to our website in the chat. All right. So that basically wraps up our waste management webinar. I know I kind of flew through it. I just get so excited about waste, you know? But before we jump into any questions, I would like to thank you all so much for joining me today and listening to me talk trash. I will send also a feedback form into the chat, and if you could just take 5 minutes to answer some of the questions, that would be hugely appreciated. We're always striving to make content that is relevant and educational, and we can't always do that without your help. So without further ado, are there any questions at all? Let's see, I'll have a look-see in the chat as well. Okay, perfect. Doesn't look like there are any, but if you do have any questions, you can also reach out at that email, info@50shadesgreener.ie, and we will be more than happy to address them. So I'm going to stop sharing just now quickly and stop my recording.